The rain drummed against the hospital window as fragments of my life returned in jagged pieces. 3 months. That's how long I'd been living a lie, believing her gentle touches, her whispered, "I love yous," her careful way of arranging my pills each morning. The wedding ring on my finger felt foreign now, a prop in her elaborate performance. Sarah sat beside my bed, her fingers intertwined with mine, and I watched her face crumble as the neurologist delivered the news like a death sentence. "Your memory has fully returned, Mr. Chen, all of it." She didn't know I'd been remembering fragments for weeks, the divorce papers hidden in her jewelry box, the packed bags she'd moved to the guest room, the way she'd changed the locks before my accident, erasing me from the home we'd built together. But what broke me wasn't the deception, it was the realization that for 3 months I'd glimpsed the woman I fell in love with, the one who brought me soup when I was sick, who laughed at my terrible jokes, who held me when nightmares struck. She'd given me everything I'd begged for during our marriage, but only when I couldn't remember why she'd left. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. I'd lost my wife the day I signed those papers, but I'd lost myself the day I woke up and believed her love was real again. Now, with perfect clarity, I had to decide: confront the woman who'd stolen 3 months of false hope, or thank her for showing me what we could have been. The first thing I notice when consciousness creeps back isn't the sterile smell of disinfectant or the rhythmic beeping of machines, it's her hand in mine, warm, trembling, achingly familiar. Sarah's fingers are intertwined with mine like they belong there, like they've never left. "David?" Her voice breaks on my name, and when I turn my head, she's crying. Not the pretty tears from movies, but the raw, desperate kind that leaves mascara streaks and swollen eyes. "You're awake. Oh God, you're finally awake." I try to speak, but my throat feels like sandpaper. She's already reaching for the water cup, bringing the straw to my lips with a tenderness that makes my chest ache. When did she become so careful with me? So gentle? "How long?" I manage to whisper. 3 months, she says, and her voice catches. 3 months since the accident. The doctors said they weren't sure if you'd ever. She can't finish the sentence, just brings my hand to her lips and kisses my knuckles. Something feels wrong, but I can't place it. The room looks different than I remember, sterile, impersonal. Where are our photos, the paintings Sarah bought from that street artist in Paris? I try to focus, but my head throbs with the effort. "Why aren't you at work?" I ask, noticing the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Sarah runs her own design consultancy. She should be in meetings, not sitting beside my hospital bed in the middle of a Tuesday. Her smile wavers for just a moment. "I've been working remotely. I couldn't leave you." She strokes my hair, and I lean into her touch instinctively. "The doctors said familiar voices might help you wake up, so I've been reading to you. Your favorite books, remember? The ones about architecture and city planning that put me to sleep." I laugh, and it hurts my ribs, but it also feels like coming home. This is my Sarah, teasing, loving, piad. Resent in ways she hasn't been for how long? The months before my accident feel hazy, like looking through fog. "I need to call Dr. Martinez," she says, reaching for her phone. "He'll want to examine you now that you're conscious." "Wait." I catch her wrist, and she freezes. Her pulse races beneath my fingers. "Just stay with me for a minute, please." Something flickers across her face. Guilt? Fear? But then she settles back into the chair, closer this time, and I can smell her perfume, the expensive one I bought her for our anniversary. When was our anniversary? The dates swim in my head, refusing to solidify. "I missed you," she whispers, and her voice breaks again. "I missed you so much, David. There were moments when I thought I'd lost you forever, and I didn't know how to breathe." The words sound strange coming from her. Familiar, but wrong somehow, like a song played in a different key. I study her face, really look at her for the first time since waking up. She's thinner than I remember, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup can't quite hide. When did she start looking so fragile? "Sarah," I start to say, but she's already standing, smoothing down her skirt with nervous hands. "I should really call the doctor, and your sister, Emma's been so worried, and your parents, they've been calling every day." She's talking too fast, moving around the room like she can't sit still. "Everyone's going to be so relieved that you're okay." She disappears into the hallway, and I hear her voice echoing off the walls, speaking rapidly to someone on the phone. Through the crack in the door, I catch fragments. He's awake. Yes, completely coherent. No, he seems fine, just confused about the timeline. Confused about the timeline, that's exactly what I am. The last clear memory I have is of Sarah and me fighting about something. What was it? My work ski duel, her spending. The memory slides away like water through my fingers. When she returns with Dr. Martinez, she's composed herself. Her smile is bright, professional, the one she uses with clients. But I notice how she hovers near the door, like she's ready to run. The examination is routine, checking my reflexes, asking me basic questions, testing my memory. I know my name, my age, the president, the year. But when Dr. Martinez asks about recent events, everything becomes fuzzy. It's normal, he assures both of us. Retrograde amnesia is common with traumatic brain injuries. The memories closer to the accident are often the most affected. They may return gradually, or some gaps might remain permanent. Sarah nods, but she won't meet my eyes. Her hands are folded in her lap, knuckles white. After the doctor leaves, promising to return tomorrow, we're alone again. The silence stretches between us, heavy with unspoken things. I want to ask her what's wrong, why she seems so nervous, but exhaustion is pulling at me like a tide. You should rest, she says, reading my fatigue. I'll be right here when you wake up. Promise? The word slips out before I can stop it, vulnerable and childlike. Her face crumbles for just a second before she rebuilds her composure. Promise. As I drift toward sleep, I hear her moving around the room, settling into the chair beside my bed. The soft sound of pages turning. She's brought a book, just like she said, but instead of reading aloud, she's quiet, and when I crack my eyes open, she's staring at her phone screen, thumb hovering over what looks like a text message. The last thing I see before sleep takes me is Sarah in the bathroom, door slightly ajar, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. When I try to call out to her, no sound comes, and in the space between consciousness and dreams, I wonder why the woman who just promised never to leave me looks like she's already saying goodbye. I wake to the smell of coffee, real coffee, not the watery hospital version. Sarah stands by the window, silhouetted against the morning light, stirring sugar into a ceramic mug I recognize from home. When did she bring that from our kitchen? You're awake, she says, turning with a smile that seems more genuine than yesterday's. I thought you might want something that doesn't taste like cardboard. The coffee is perfect, strong, with just a hint of cinnamon, the way I've always made it. But watching Sarah sip from her own cup, I notice something odd. She winces slightly, like it's too bitter, but drinks it anyway. Since when do you drink your coffee black? I ask. She pauses, cup halfway to her lips. I've been trying to cut back on sugar, for health reasons. It's a small thing, insignificant really, but it lodges in my mind like a splinter. Sarah has never cared about sugar in her coffee. She used to joke that her morning latte was more dessert than beverage. Dr. Martinez arrives with discharge papers and a stack of instructions. Physical therapy 3 times a week, follow-up appointments, medications to prevent seizures. Sarah takes notes in a small leather journal I've never seen before, asking detailed questions about my care. The most important thing is consistency, Dr. Martinez tells her. Familiar routines, familiar environments. His brain needs time to rebuild those neural pathways. Of course, Sarah says. I'll make sure everything is exactly as it should be. The drive home is quiet, Sarah navigating traffic with the careful attention of someone unused to the route. When we pull into our driveway, I stare at the house that should feel like sanctuary, but somehow doesn't. The garden is different, tidier, with new plantings I don't remember choosing. When did we plant the roses? I ask as Sarah helps me up the front steps. Last spring, Shob. E says quickly. You probably don't remember because of the accident. Inside, the house feels simultaneously familiar and foreign. Our furniture is where it should be, but there are gaps where things used to sit. The bookshelf looks sparse, and I can't find the ugly ceramic vase Sarah's mother gave us, the one we both hated, but never had the heart to throw away. Where's the vase? I ask. The blue monstrosity from your mom? Sarah's hand freezes on the doorknob. It broke, she says. Last month. I was going to replace it, but then the accident happened, and I forgot. She leads me to our bedroom, but stops at the doorway. The doctor said you should sleep in the guest room for now, just until you're steadier on your feet. I wouldn't want you to fall during the night. The guest room has been transformed, fresh sheets, a stack of my favorite books on the nightstand, even the reading lamp from my office. Sarah has thought of everything, too much maybe. It feels like a stage set, carefully arranged for an audience of one. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, I listened to Sarah moving through the house. She's in the kitchen, opening and closing cabinets, running water. The sounds are domestic and comforting, but also wrong somehow. Like she's performing the ritual of making dinner, rather than living it. When she brings me a tray, soup and sandwiches cut into triangles the way my mother used to do, I catch her studying my face, watching for my reaction. "This is perfect," I tell her, and she exhales like she's been holding her breath. "I wasn't sure if you'd remember how you like your grilled cheese." But I don't remember asking for grilled cheese. In fact, I can't remember the last time I ate one. Sarah sits on the edge of the bed while I eat, chattering about her work, about plans for my recovery, about anything except the obvious question hanging between us. Why does everything feel like we're playing house instead of living in one? Over the following days, I notice more inconsistencies. My clothes don't fit quite right, like they've been sitting in a closet too long without being worn. Sarah's morning routine seems improvised. She makes coffee too strong, burns the toast, can't find the spare keys to my car. "I've been so worried about you," she explains when I ask about the keys. "I haven't been thinking clearly." She hovers constantly, anticipating needs I haven't expressed, bringing me pills before I ask for them, adjusting pillows I didn't know were crooked. It's the kind of attentiveness I used to dream about during the bad years of our marriage, when Sarah seemed more interested in her phone than in me. But now that I have it, it feels suffocating. "You don't have to wait on me," I tell her after she brings me lunch for the third day in a row. "I can make my own sandwich." "I want to," she says, and there's something desperate in her voice. "I want to take care of you." That evening, Sarah suggests we watch a movie, one of the romantic comedies she loves and I usually tolerate, but as we settle onto the couch, she chooses something different, a documentary about architecture that I mentioned wanting to see months ago. How does she remember that when I can barely recall saying it? Halfway through, her phone buzzes with a text. She glances at it and her face goes pale. "Who is it?" I ask. "Work," she says, but she's already turning the phone face down. "Nothing important." Later, when she thinks I'm asleep, I hear her in the bathroom talking in hushed tones. I can't make out the words, but the tone is urgent, apologetic. When she finally comes to bed, the guest bed, where she's been sleeping beside me despite her story about doctor's orders, she smells like tears and toothpaste. "Sarah," I whisper in the darkness. Are we okay? I mean, before the accident, were we okay?" The silence stretches so long I think she's fallen asleep. Then, quietly, "We were working on it." "Working on what?" "Just things. Marriage things. Nothing that can't be fixed." She turns toward me, and in the dim light from the hallway, I can see her eyes are open, staring at something I can't see. "I love you," she says, and it sounds like a confession. "I love you too," I reply, because it's true, even if everything else feels like a lie we're both telling ourselves. The next morning, I find Sarah in the kitchen making breakfast, humming under her breath. It's the first time I've heard her hum since I've been home, and the sound is achingly familiar. This is the Sarah I married, the one who sang in the shower and danced while cooking and filled our house with music. But when she notices me watching, the humming stops, and she becomes careful again, measured, like she's walking on ice that might crack beneath her feet. "Scrambled eggs okay?" she asks. "Perfect," I say, and I mean it, but as I watch her cook, moving through our kitchen like a guest in her own home, I can't shake the feeling that we're both pretending to be people we used to be, and neither of us knows how to stop. The morning light streams through our kitchen windows, catching the dust motes Sarah stirs up as she arranges her easel. She's claimed the breakfast nook as her studio, spreading canvases across our dining table like she's mapping out a new world. "Are you sure this is okay?" she asks for the third time, mixing cerulean blue with titanium white on her palette. "I can move everything to the garage if it's too messy." "It's perfect," I tell her, and I mean it. This is the Sarah I fell in love with, paint-stained fingers and wild hair escaping from a messy bun, so absorbed in color and light that she forgets to eat lunch. I watch her work from my spot at the kitchen counter, pretending to read the newspaper but really studying the way she layers paint like she's building something precious. She keeps glancing at me, shy almost, like she expects me to tell her to stop making a mess. "What are you painting?" I ask. "The garden," she says, but when I look at the canvas, it's all abstract shapes and movement. Or maybe how the garden feels, I can't decide. When did Sarah start painting feelings instead of things? Before the accident, her art was precise, controlled, architectural drawings and still lifes that looked like photographs. This is different, wilder, more honest somehow. Will you teach me? The words slip out before I think about them. Sarah's brush stops mid-stroke. Teach you what? To paint. I want to understand how you see things. Her smile is so bright it could power the house. Really? You want to learn? I want to watch you create something beautiful, I say, and the blush that spreads across her cheeks makes her look 19 again. She mixes a pale yellow on a clean brush and guides my hand to the canvas. Start with the light, she whispers, her breath warm against my ear. Paint where the sun touches first. For an hour, we paint together. Her hands covering mine, showing me how to blend colors, how to let the brush dance instead of drag. I'm terrible at it, but Sarah laughs at my clumsy attempts, and the sound fills spaces in our house that have been empty for too long. You're thinking too hard, she says when I try to paint a recognizable flower. Art isn't about perfection, it's about feeling. Then I'm feeling very confused, I admit, looking at my muddy brown attempt at a rose. She laughs again, and I realize I'd forgotten how musical her laughter is, how it makes everything else fade away. The doorbell rings, shattering our bubble. Sarah freezes, paintbrush halfway to the canvas. Are you expecting someone? I ask. No. She's already moving toward the front door, but her steps are reluctant. Maybe it's a delivery. Through the kitchen window, I see Emma's car in our driveway. My sister has always been unpredictable, but her timing feels intrusive today. Sarah opens the door, and I hear Emma's voice carrying through the house. David! Oh my God, you look so much better! Emma rushes past Sarah like she owns the place, wrapping me in a hug that smells like expensive perfume and coffee shop pastries. I brought bagels from that place you love downtown. But I don't remember loving any bagel place downtown. I search my memory and come up empty, which has been happening more often lately, not just about the months before my accident, but about things that should be recent memories. Emma, this is such a surprise, Sarah says, and there's something strained in her voice. David's still recovering, so we're keeping things quiet. I won't stay long, Emma promises, but she's already settling into a kitchen chair, eyeing Sarah's painting supplies with curiosity. Wow, Sarah, I didn't know you were still painting. I thought you gave that up years ago. The silence that follows is loaded with it. Something I can't identify. Sarah busies herself cleaning brushes, her movements sharp and efficient. I started again recently, Sarah says finally. David's been encouraging me. Emma looks between us with the expression she used to wear when we were kids, and she'd caught me in a lie. That's nice. David always was supportive of your hobbies. Hobbies. The word lands wrong, and I see Sarah flinch. When did I start thinking of her art as a hobby instead of a passion? Where's Marcus? I ask, steering the conversation toward Emma's husband. And the kids? Marcus is at soccer practice with Jake, and Lily's at dance class. You know how weekends are with kids. Emma pauses, studying my face. You do remember Jake and Lily, don't you? Your nephew and niece? Of course I remember them, don't I? Their faces swim in my memory, but the details are soft around the edges. How old are they now? When did I last see them? They're 8 and 6, Sarah supplies quietly. Jake just started playing soccer, and Lily wants to be a ballerina. Right, I say, but Emma's looking at me with concern now. David, are you okay? You seem different. He's still recovering, Sarah says quickly. The doctor said his memory might be spotty for a while. Emma nods, but she keeps watching me like I'm a puzzle she can't solve. She stays for another hour, chatting about family and work and neighborhood gossip, but I can feel her studying us. When Sarah excuses herself to use the bathroom, Emma leans closer. Is everything okay between you two? She asks quietly. What do you mean? I don't know. Sarah seems nervous, and you seem different, calmer maybe. You haven't checked your phone once since I've been here. She's right, my phone has been sitting silent on the counter, and I haven't felt the urge to check it. When did I stop being a slave to email and text messages? I'm just focusing on getting better, I tell her. After Emma leaves, Sarah seems agitated. She leans the kitchen twice, reorganizes her painting supplies, starts dinner too early, and then puts everything away again. What's wrong? I ask. Nothing, Emma seemed suspicious, about us. Suspicious how? Sarah stops wiping the already clean counter and looks at me directly. She thinks we're different, that you're different. Maybe I am different, maybe the accident changed me. Maybe, Sarah says, but she doesn't sound convinced. That evening, Sarah's phone rings during dinner. She glances at the screen and lets it go to voicemail, but it rings again immediately. Answer it, I tell her. It might be important. She reluctantly picks up. Hi, Mom. Yes, I know it's been a while. David's fine, he's recovering well. No, we don't need anything. Mom, I have to go, we're eating dinner. But we weren't eating dinner. Our plates are still cold, and Sarah hung up before her mother could respond. Your mom's worried about you, I observe. She worries about everything, Sarah says, but she won't meet my eyes. Later, as we're getting ready for bed, I notice Sarah pulling clothes from what looks like a suitcase in the closet corner. Why do you have a suitcase? I ask. Sarah freezes with a nightgown in her hands. I packed some things when you were in the hospital, in case I needed to stay overnight. I just haven't unpacked everything yet. The explanation makes sense, but something about it feels rehearsed, like she's been preparing for me to ask that question. As we lie in the guest bed together, Sarah curled against my side, I listen to her breathing and try to make sense of the pieces that don't fit. Emma's confusion, the missing photos, Sarah's nervous energy, the way she seems to be playing a part instead of living her life. Sarah, I whisper in the darkness. Before the accident, were we happy? Her breathing stops for a moment. Then, we were trying to be. Trying. Every marriage has rough patches, David. We were working through ours. But as I drift towards sleep, I can't help wondering what kind of rough patch requires my wife to pack a suitcase and remove our wedding photos from the house, and why, if we were working through our problems, do I feel like I'm living with a beautiful stranger who knows all my favorite things but none of my recent memories? The last thing I hear before sleep takes me is Sarah whispering something that sounds like, I'm sorry, but when I ask her to repeat it, she pretends to be asleep. The dreams come in fragments, like broken glass cutting through sleep. Sarah's voice, sharp with anger. You promised me, David, you promised things would change. The sound of a door slamming. My own voice, defensive and cold. If that's how you feel, maybe we should just end this. I wake with my heart pounding, sweat cooling on my skin. Beside me, Sarah sleeps peacefully, her face soft in the early morning light. But the dream, or memory, clings to me like smoke. Bad dream? Sarah asks, eyes still closed. Something like that. I study her profile, looking for traces of the woman who screamed at me in my sleep. Do we fight, Sarah? I mean, did we fight before the accident? Her eyes open, and for a moment I see something flicker there. Fear? Guilt? But then she smiles, and it's gone. All couples fight sometimes, she says carefully, but we always work things out. At breakfast, I find myself watching her more closely. The way she moves through our kitchen seems practiced now, but also tentative, like she's performing a role she's memorized but isn't sure she believes in. Why don't we ever have friends over? I ask, spreading jam on toast that tastes like cardboard in my mouth. Sarah's coffee cup pauses halfway to her lips. You're still recovering. The doctor said to keep things quiet. But what about before? When was the last time we had Marcus and Emma over for dinner, or your college friends? People get busy, she says, but she won't look at me. Married life isn't all dinner parties and game nights. But I remember it being exactly that, our house filled with laughter and conversation, Sarah cooking elaborate meals to show off, me mixing cocktails and telling stories that made everyone laugh. When did we become people who ate dinner in silence? That afternoon, while Sarah is out getting groceries, I wander through our house like a detective investigating his own life. In my office, everything looks correct but feels wrong. My desk is too clean, my bookshelf organized in a way that doesn't match my usual chaos. I find a prescription bottle behind some books, anxiety medication prescribed to Sarah, dated 2 months before my accident. Why was Sarah taking anxiety medication? What was she anxious about? When she returns with bags of groceries, I'm holding the bottle. You found my pills, she says, setting down the bags with shaking hands. Sarah, were you having panic attacks before the accident? She sinks into a kitchen chair like her legs can't hold her anymore. I was going through a difficult time. Marriage counseling, remember? We were working on our communication issues. Marriage counseling, another piece that doesn't fit into the puzzle of our perfect life. What kind of communication issues? The usual things. You worked too much, I felt neglected, we were learning to prioritize each other better. Her voice sounds rehearsed, like she's reciting from a script. The accident happened right when we were making progress. That evening, Sarah suggests having her sister Lisa and brother-in-law Mark over for dinner. It's the first time she's wanted to see anyone since I've been home, and I'm grateful for the normalcy. But the evening feels staged from the moment they arrive. Lisa hugs me too carefully, like I might break. Mark keeps asking how I'm feeling in the overly cheerful voice people use with children, and Sarah hovers, jumping in to answer questions before I can respond. It's so good to see you both together, Lisa says over dessert, but she's watching us with the same confused expression Emma wore. You seem different, more connected. We're grateful for our second chance, Sarah says, reaching for my hand. Her palm is damp with perspiration. After they leave, I help Sarah clean up, but the silence between us feels heavy with unspoken things. They seemed surprised to see us happy, I observe. Sarah drops a wine glass, and it shatters against the kitchen tile. Shit, sorry, I'm just tired. As she kneels to pick up the pieces, I see her hands are shaking. Sarah, what aren't you telling me? She looks up at me from the floor, surrounded by broken glass, and for a moment I think she's going to confess whatever secret she's carrying. Instead, she forces a smile. I'm just overwhelmed, taking care of you, managing everything on my own. I'm not complaining, she adds quickly. I'm happy to do it, I just need to adjust. That night, I pretend to sleep while Sarah makes quiet phone calls in the bathroom. Through the closed door, I catch fragments. I can't keep doing this. When he remembers. I never meant for it to go this far. When she returns to bed, I feign sleep, but my mind races. What can't she keep doing? What is she afraid I'll remember? The next morning, I confront her as gently as I can. Sarah, are we really married? She goes completely still, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. What kind of question is that? I keep having these dreams, arguments, doors slamming, sleeping in separate beds, and everyone who visits us acts like they're seeing something they didn't expect. Sarah sets down her mug and reaches for my hands. David, you had a traumatic brain injury. Dreams and reality can get mixed up during recovery. The doctor warned us about this. But the anxiety medication was because I was terrified of losing you, she interrupts, and her voice breaks. Yes, we were having problems before your accident. Yes, I was seeing a counselor to help me cope with feeling ignored and unimportant in our marriage, but we were working on it, and then you nearly died, and I realized how stupid our fights were. Tears are streaming down her face now, and I feel like a monster for questioning her. I'm sorry, I whisper, pulling her into my arms. I'm sorry I made you feel ignored. I'm sorry I wasn't the husband you deserved. She cries against my chest, and I hold her, promising things will be different now. But even as I comfort her, I can't shake the feeling that she's crying for reasons I don't understand, and that the marriage we're trying to rebuild might never have existed in the first place. We'll get through this together, I tell her, and she nods against my shoulder. Together, she agrees, but the word sounds like goodbye. I start looking through my own life the way you'd investigate a stranger's. When Sarah leaves for her therapy appointment, something new she started since my accident, I sit at my laptop and try to piece together the months before my memory went dark. My browser history has been cleared, every bookmark deleted. It's like someone tried to erase digital footprints, but they missed a few things. In my email drafts, I find fragments of messages I apparently never sent. Sarah, we need to talk about what happened at dinner last night. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when... The messages cut off mid-sentence, but they paint a picture that doesn't match Sarah's story of a marriage in counseling, working through ordinary problems. I dig deeper. Bank statements show something that makes my stomach drop. Separate checking accounts, opened 6 months ago. My direct deposit has been going to an account Sarah apparently doesn't have access to. Her freelance income flows to a different bank entirely. Why would we separate our finances if we were working on our marriage? My gym membership was cancelled 4 months ago, not because of budget constraints, but because I moved to a different location, across town. The address matches an apartment complex I don't remember visiting, but there's a lease agreement in my email with my name on it. I was apparently living somewhere else before my accident. The front door opens and I slam the laptop shut like a teenager caught watching porn. Sarah appears in the doorway of my office, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "How was therapy?" I ask, trying to sound casual. "Good. Dr. Reeves thinks I'm making progress with my anxiety." She studies my face. "What have you been doing?" "Just checking email, trying to catch up on work stuff." But Sarah's looking at my laptop with suspicious eyes. "Find anything interesting?" The question is loaded, like she knows exactly what I've been looking at. "Actually, yes, I found a lease agreement for an apartment on Maple Street. Do you know anything about that?" Sarah goes completely still. For a long moment, the only sound is the heating system clicking on. "You don't remember the apartment," she says finally. "It's not a question." "Should I?" Sarah sits down heavily in the chair across from my desk. "I was hoping you wouldn't find that until you were stronger." My heart starts pounding. "Find what, Sarah?" "The apartment it was a temporary thing. We were having problems, and you thought some space might help us gain perspective. It was just supposed to be for a few weeks, to let us both think clearly." "I moved out?" "Not moved out. Took a break. There's a difference." "But if I was taking a break from our marriage, why were our friends surprised to see us happy together? Why does Emma think I seem different?" "How long was I living there?" 2 months, Sarah admits. "But David, we were talking every day, working through things. The accident happened on your way here. You were coming to discuss moving back home." It's a reasonable explanation, but something about it feels constructed, like she's building the story as she tells it. "Can we go see the apartment?" I ask. Sarah's face goes pale. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because I can't remember anything about it, and maybe seeing it would help trigger some memories." "The lease is up," she says quickly. "I already cleared everything out and broke the lease after your accident. There's nothing to see." But I already know she's lying, because the lease agreement I found runs through the end of next month. That evening, while Sarah cooks dinner, I excuse myself and drive to Maple Street. The apartment complex is nice, not the kind of temporary space someone would choose for, or a trial separation, but the kind of place you'd rent if you were starting over. I sit in my car outside Building C, staring at Unit 237, trying to remember living there. The windows are dark, but I can see furniture inside. My furniture, the reading chair from my office, the side table Sarah always said was too modern for our house. I'm not just taking a break from our marriage, I was building a new life. When I return home, Sarah is waiting in the living room with a glass of wine and an expression I can't read. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asks. I could lie, pretend I went to the store or for a drive to clear my head. Instead, I sit down across from her. "The apartment isn't empty, Sarah. I could see my furniture through the windows." She takes a long sip of wine, and when she looks at me, her eyes are full of tears. "I was going to tell you," she says, "when you were stronger, when you could handle the whole truth." "What is the whole truth?" Sarah sets down her wine glass and folds her hands in her lap, like she's praying. "We weren't just having problems, David. We were getting divorced." The words hit me like physical blows. Divorced, not separated, not taking a break. Divorced. "The papers were filed 2 weeks before your accident," she continues, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'd already divided our assets, chosen lawyers, started telling our families. It was almost final." I feel like I'm drowning in my own living room, gasping for air that isn't there. "Then why?" I start, but I can't finish the question. "Why are you here? Why did you let me believe we were happy? Why did you lie?" "Because when you woke up and looked at me like I was your whole world, I couldn't bear to tell you that I'd left you," Sarah says, and now she's crying openly. "Because for 3 months, I got to remember why I fell in love with you. Because the man in that hospital bed was the husband I always wanted you to be." The end stretches between us like a chasm. I should be angry. I should be furious at the deception, the months of lies, the elaborate performance of a marriage that was already over. Instead, I feel hollow, empty, like someone has scooped out my insides and left me a shell of a person. "Was any of it real?" I ask. "The painting, the coffee in the morning, the way you looked at me?" "All of it was real," Sarah whispers. That's what makes this so impossible. I fell in love with you all over again, but you're not the same person I divorced, and I'm not the same person who left. I stand up because I can't sit still anymore, can't pretend this conversation is manageable. I need to think, I tell her. David, please. I need to think, Sarah, alone. I walk to the guest room, our fake bedroom in our fake marriage, and close the door. Through the thin walls, I can hear Sarah crying in the living room, but I can't comfort her. Not when I don't know which version of us is real, and which is the beautiful lie we've been living for 3 months. The morning comes grey and heavy, like the sky is pressing down on our house. Sarah has coffee ready when I emerge from the guest room, but her eyes are red-rimmed and she won't look directly at me. David, she starts, but I hold up a hand. I need time to process this, I tell her. Can we just exist today, without talking about it? She nods, relief flickering across her face. Of course, whatever you need. But what I need is impossible. To unknow what I know, to go back to the beautiful lie we were living yesterday morning. Instead, I sit at the kitchen table and drink coffee that tastes like ashes, while Sarah moves around me like I'm made of glass. The doorbell saves us from the suffocating silence. Sarah frowns. We're not expecting anyone, but when she opens the door, James Mitchell, my business partner, stands on our porch with a bottle of wine and a confused expression. James, Sarah says, her voice tight with panic. What a surprise. I brought wine, he says, holding up the bottle like evidence. For the celebration dinner you invited me to, David's recovery. He looks past Sarah to where I'm sitting at the kitchen table. Jesus, David, you look good. I mean, considering you nearly died. But James isn't looking at me like someone happy to see a friend recovered. He's looking between Sarah and me like he's witnessing something impossible. James, Sarah says quickly, I think there might have been some confusion. No confusion, James interrupts, stepping into our foyer uninvited. You called me yesterday, Sarah, said David was doing much better and you wanted to celebrate with close friends, said it had been too long since we'd all been together. I don't remember Sarah making that call, and the James I'm looking at seems as surprised to see us together as Emma did. David, James says, setting the wine on our kitchen counter, I have to ask. Come. How are you handling all this? The reconciliation, I mean. Sarah makes a small sound, like she's choking on air. What reconciliation? I ask, though I'm starting to understand. James looks between us, his confusion deepening. The getting back together? After the divorce proceedings? Sarah, you did tell him, right? About calling off the lawyers? The silence that follows is deafening. Sarah's face has gone completely white, and James suddenly looks like he wants to disappear. I think I should go, James says quickly. I'm obviously interrupting something. No, I say, standing up. Don't go. Tell me about the divorce proceedings, James. Sarah makes a desperate gesture toward James, shaking her head slightly, but he's already committed to the truth. David, man, I was there when you signed the papers. You were staying at my place for a week after Sarah asked you to move out. You were devastated, but you said it was for the best, that you'd failed her too many times to count. Each word lands like a physical blow. I was staying at James's place. Sarah asked me to move out. I signed papers. The accident happened when you were driving to your lawyer's office, James continues, oblivious to the destruction he's causing. To finalize the asset division. Sarah, I thought you would have told him by now. Sarah sinks into a kitchen chair like her legs can't hold her anymore. I was going to, she whispers. I just needed more time. James looks between us and understanding finally dawns on his face. Oh shit, David, you don't remember any of it, do you? The fights, the separation, the papers? He had amnesia, Sarah says, her voice barely audible. He didn't remember the divorce. I was trying to protect him while he recovered. By pretending you were still married? James's voice is incredulous. Sarah, that's not protection, that's... He doesn't finish the sentence, but the word hangs in the air anyway. Deception. After James leaves, backing out of our driveway like he's fleeing a crime scene, Sarah and I sit in our kitchen in a silence that feels like the end of the world. How long were you planning to keep this up? I ask finally. I don't know, she admits. At first I thought just until you were stronger, then days turned into weeks and you were getting better and we were happy. We were living a lie. No, Sarah says fiercely. We were living the marriage we should have had, the one where you paid attention to me, where I felt important, where we actually talked to each other. But it wasn't real. It felt real. Tears are streaming down her face now. For 3 months, I had the husband I always wanted, and you had a wife who adored you instead of resenting you. Tell me that didn't feel real. I want to argue, but I can't. It did feel real, more real than any relationship I can remember having. Sarah, what we had in the hospital, these past months, I loved that version of us. But you're right, I'm not the same person you divorced. I don't remember being the workaholic who ignored you, the husband who made you feel invisible. I only remember loving you. Then why can't we start over? She asks desperately. Why can't we be these versions of ourselves? Because you built it on a lie, and because the man you fell in love with these past 3 months only existed because he didn't remember failing you. Sarah covers her face with her hands and sobs. I know it was wrong, but David, I haven't been this happy in years. Even knowing it was temporary, even knowing you'd remember eventually, I was happy. I want to comfort her, but I'm drowning in my own confusion. I love the Sarah who painted in our kitchen and laughed at my terrible jokes, but is she real, or is she just playing a part the way I apparently was? I need to know who I really am, I tell her. Not the man you've been living with, but the one you divorced. I need to understand what went wrong between us. Sarah looks up at me with swollen eyes. Are you asking me to leave? I'm asking you to tell me the truth, all of it. What kind of husband was I? What did I do that made you stop loving me? She's quiet for so long I think she won't answer. When she finally speaks, her voice is barely a whisper. You didn't do anything dramatic. You didn't cheat or lie or hurt me physically. You just disappeared. Into your work, your phone, your own world. I became furniture in your life, something that was always there, so you stopped seeing me. When was the last time you felt loved by me? Before the accident, I mean. Sarah thinks about it, and the pause stretches so long it becomes an answer itself. Our anniversary 2 years ago, she says finally. You made dinner reservations, bought me flowers, told me I looked beautiful, but even then, you checked your phone during dessert. 2 years, I hadn't made my wife feel loved in 2 years. Why didn't you leave sooner? I ask. Because I kept hoping you'd remember how to see me, and because leaving someone isn't the same as stopping loving them. The truth of that hits me like a physical blow. She loved me even as she divorced me, and I probably loved her even as I ignored her. Sarah, I say carefully, what if we tried again, really tried, with no lies this time? Hope flickers in her eyes. You mean that? I mean I want to try, but not like this, not with me pretending to be someone I'm not, and you pretending our marriage didn't end. We'd have to start over completely, honestly. Sarah nods eagerly. Yes, completely honestly. No more lies. But even as we make this promise, I can see the fear in her eyes, because if we're completely honest, we'll have to face the truth that the people we were before my accident couldn't make our marriage work, and we have no guarantee that the people we are now can do any better. I need to remember who I was, I tell her. The real me, not the version you've been living with. Okay, she whispers. But David, when you remember everything, when you know exactly why I left, will you still want to try? I don't know how to answer that question, because I'm starting to remember fragments, moments of selfishness, times when I chose work over her, conversations where I was physically present but emotionally absent, and I'm terrified that when my full memory returns, I'll understand why Sarah had to leave me. I don't know, I admit, but I want to find out. I wake up at 3:17 a.m. knowing everything. It doesn't come gradually like the doctors predicted, it hits me all at once, a damn burst of memory that leaves me gasping in the darkness of our guest room. I remember the final fight, the way Sarah's voice broke when she said, I can't be invisible in my own marriage anymore. I remember packing my things while she cried in the bedroom we used to share. I remember signing the divorce papers with hands that shook so badly I could barely hold the pen. But most of all, I remember why. I remember coming home at 9 p.m. on our anniversary to find Sarah in the dress I'd bought her, dinner cold on the table, candles burned down to nothing. I remember her asking about my day and me answering with my eyes on my phone. I remember her saying she'd been accepted into that art residency in Portland, the opportunity she'd dreamed about for years, and me responding with, "That's nice, honey," without even looking up from my laptop. I remember being a husband in name only, a ghost haunting the edges of Sarah's life. Beside me, Sarah sleeps peacefully, her hand resting on my chest like she's afraid I might disappear. In the pale light from the hallway, she looks younger, softer, like the woman I married 8 years ago. The woman who used to wake me up with kisses and leave little notes in my lunch and believe that I was capable of being the man she deserved. I slip out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake her, and pad to the kitchen in bare feet. The house feels different now that I remember living here as strangers, Sarah and I orbiting each other like distant planets, polite and careful and desperately unhappy. I make coffee the way I used to in the apartment on Maple Street, strong and bitter, no sugar, no cream. The way you make coffee when you're drinking it alone at 4 a.m., wondering how you became a person your wife couldn't love anymore. But then I remember how Sarah has been making coffee these past 3 months, with cinnamon and care, bringing it to me in bed with a smile that lit up her whole face. I remember her painting in our kitchen, humming while she worked, asking me about colors and light like my opinion mattered. I remember falling asleep beside her every night and waking up grateful she was still there. The Sarah who divorced me and the Sarah who's been living this lie are the same person. But so am I, the husband who ignored her and the man who's been learning to see her again. When Sarah wakes up and finds me in the kitchen, she knows immediately that something has changed. Maybe it's the way I'm sitting, maybe it's the expression on my face, but she stops in the doorway like she's seeing a stranger. "You remember," she says, "it's not a question. Everything." Sarah wraps her arms around herself, suddenly small in her cotton nightgown. "How much?" "All of it. The fights, the lawyers, the papers. The way you looked at me the last morning we lived together, like you were already gone, even though you were still standing in our kitchen." She sits down across from me, and I can see her bracing for anger, for accusations, for the confrontation we should have had months ago. Instead, I push a mug of coffee toward her, made the way she likes it, with cream and enough sugar to make it almost dessert. "Why aren't you furious with me?" she asks. "Because I remember why you left, and I remember that you were right to leave." Sarah stares at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. "David, I lied to you for 3 months. I let you believe we were happily married when I'd already filed divorce papers. I manipulated your memory loss to live out some fantasy. To love me the way you always wanted to," I interrupt, "and to let me love you the way I should have from the beginning." Tears start sliding down her cheeks, but she doesn't look away from me. "I was selfish," she whispers. "I took advantage of your amnesia to have the marriage I always wanted instead of the one we actually had." "Sarah, do you know what I was doing the night before my accident?" She shakes her head. "I was sitting in that apartment, staring at the divorce papers and trying to figure out when I'd stopped seeing you, really seeing you. I'd made lists of all the ways I'd failed you, all the moments I'd chosen my phone over your voice, my work over your dreams. I was going to call you that morning and beg you to give me one more chance. David, the accident happened on my way to your office. I was going to show up with flowers and a speech about how I wanted to be the husband you deserved, but I never got the chance because 3 months of our life disappeared, and when I woke up, you'd already become the wife you always should have been." Sarah covers her face with her hands. "This is so fucked up." "Yeah, I agree. It really is." We sit in silence for a while, drinking coffee and processing the impossible situation we've created. 2 people who divorced each other, fell in love again, and now have to figure out which version of themselves is real. "What happens now?" Sarah asks finally. "I don't know. The legal David and Sarah got divorced because they couldn't make their marriage work. But the David and Sarah from these past 3 months." I trail off, searching for the right words. "We're living in a fantasy," she finishes. "Or maybe they were living the way we always could have, if we'd known how." Sarah looks up at me, hope and fear warring in her expression. "David, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that the man who ignored you and the man who's been falling in love with you every morning for 3 months are both me, and the woman who left me and the woman who's been painting in our kitchen are both you. We're not different people, we're the same people, choosing differently. But the divorce was the right decision for who we were then, but maybe it doesn't have to define who we are now." Sarah stares at me for a long moment, and I can see her trying to decide whether to hope or protect herself. "Are you asking me to stay?" she whispers. "I'm asking if you want to find out who we could be if we started over, really started over, with no amnesia, no lies, just 2 people who know exactly how badly they can hurt each other and choose to try anyway." "That's terrifying," she says. Yeah, but the alternative is going back to being strangers who used to love each other. Sarah reaches across the table and takes my hand. Her palm is warm, slightly damp, achingly familiar. If we do this, she says, we can't pretend the divorce never happened. We can't go back to the way things were before your accident, either before the real accident or before you remembered. I know. We'd have to learn to be married to each other all over again, the real versions of ourselves. I know. And we'd have to figure out how to trust each other after 3 months of lies. I know, I say again. Sarah, I know all of that, and I still want to try. She studies my face for a long time, looking for cracks in my resolve. Okay, she says finally. Let's try. But even as she says it, I can see the fear in her eyes. Because now we both know exactly what we're capable of, the ways we can hurt each other, ignore each other, lie to each other. And we're choosing to stay anyway, which is either the bravest thing we've ever done or the most foolish. Maybe both. We spend the morning walking through the archaeology of our relationship, visiting the places where we learned to love and learned to hurt each other. The coffee shop where we had our first date, still serving the same oversweetened lattes that made Sarah wrinkle her nose. The park where I proposed under a tree that's bigger now, more weathered, like us. I practiced that proposal for weeks, I tell her as we sit on the same bench where I got down on one knee 5 years ago. I was terrified you'd say no. I was terrified you'd never ask, Sarah admits. I'd been carrying around yes for months, just waiting. When did we stop being people who were excited to say yes to each other? Sarah considers this, picking at the paint peeling from the bench. I think it was gradual, like how you don't notice a cut healing until you realize the scar is there. We walk past the restaurant where we celebrated my first big promotion, the night I made partner at the firm and Sarah wore the red dress that made me forget how to speak. I remember feeling like I could conquer the world that night, with Sarah's hand in mine and her eyes bright with pride. That's when it started going wrong, I realize out loud. The promotion. Suddenly I had bigger cases, longer hours, more pressure, and instead of it being something we celebrated, it became something that consumed me. I was proud of you, Sarah says quietly. I just wanted to still matter to you after you succeeded. You always mattered. But you stopped showing me that. We continue walking, past the apartment we shared when we were newlyweds, a tiny space above a bakery where we were so poor we ate day-old pastries for dinner and called it romantic. The building looks shabbier now, but I can see our old kitchen window, where Sarah used to sit and sketch while I read case files. I loved that apartment, Sarah says, lowering my gaze. Even with the broken heater and the neighbors who fought all night? Especially because of that, we had to stay close to keep warm, we had to talk to each other because there was nowhere else to go. The truth of that hits me like a physical blow. In our beautiful house with its separate offices and guest rooms and all the space we thought we needed, we'd created too many places to hide from each other. Sarah, when did you decide to leave me? She stops walking and turns to face me. It wasn't one moment, it was 1,000 tiny moments. The nights you came home after I was asleep. The dinners you ate while checking email. The conversations where you said uh-huh without hearing a word I said. But when did you know for sure? Sarah looks away and I can see her traveling back to some specific memory that still hurts to touch. Your birthday last year. I planned this whole day, got tickets to that architecture exhibit you'd mentioned wanting to see, made reservations at the restaurant where we had our first anniversary dinner. I bought you that coffee table book about Frank Lloyd Wright that cost $200. I remember the book. It's still sitting on my desk at the office, still in its wrapping. You cancelled at the last minute because of some emergency at work, and I sat in that restaurant alone, looking at the empty chair across from me, and I realized I was already alone. I'd been alone for months, maybe years, I was just finally admitting it. Sarah, I called my sister from the restaurant bathroom and cried so hard the waiter asked if I needed help. Lisa drove across town to get me, and she held me while I sobbed in her car outside our house that I was afraid to go into because it would just be me and the silence and the sound of you not coming home. Each word is a knife, cutting deeper because I know it's all true. I remember that night, some client crisis that felt earth-shattering at the time, but now I can't even recall what it was about. I remember coming home to find Sarah already asleep, the right book sitting on the kitchen counter with a note I never read. I failed you completely, I say. Yes, she agrees, but her voice is gentle. But David, I failed you too. How? I stopped fighting for us. Instead of telling you how lonely I was, I just got quieter. Instead of demanding you see me, I made myself smaller. I enabled your neglect by accepting it. We've reached the house, our house, where we learned to live together and learned to live apart. Standing in our driveway, I can see both versions of our story, the happy couple who painted the front door blue together and the strangers who barely spoke while sharing the same address. If we do this, Sarah says, if we really try again, we can't just promise to be different, we have to figure out how to be different. What would that look like? I don't know, therapy maybe, actual communication, ground rules about work and time and attention. She pauses. And we'd have to live with what we did to each other, the divorce, the lies, all of it. Inside the house, we sit, in our living room, like we're visiting a museum of our former life. Everything looks the same, but now I can see the invisible boundaries we'd created, his chair and her chair, his side of the couch and her side, separate worlds that happen to share the same space. I need to ask you something, Sarah says, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. The man I fell in love with these past 3 months, the one who paid attention to me, who wanted to learn to paint, who made me feel important, was that real, or was it just amnesia making you into who you thought I wanted you to be? It's the question I've been dreading, because I'm not sure I know the answer. I think, I say slowly, it was both. I think losing my memory let me love you without the baggage of all our failures, but I also think it was who I always wanted to be with you. I just didn't know how to get there from where we were. And now? Now that you remember everything. Now I have to choose, every day, to be that version of myself, the version that sees you, that prioritizes you, that remembers you're not just part of the furniture in my life. Sarah nods, but I can see the fear in her eyes. What if you forget again? Not medically, but emotionally. What if 6 months from now, you slip back into old patterns? Then you have to promise to tell me, not to get smaller or quieter or to accept being ignored. You have to promise to fight for us instead of just fighting to leave. And you have to promise that when I fight, you'll listen instead of just waiting for me to stop talking. We shake hands on it, formally, like we're signing a contract. In a way, we are, not the marriage contract we signed 5 years ago when we thought love was enough, but a partnership agreement between two people who now know exactly how much work love requires. So what happens now? Sarah asks. Now we figure out how to be married to each other instead of just married to the idea of each other. That sounds hard. Yeah, I agree. But maybe that's why it's worth doing. As evening falls, we order pizza and eat it on the floor of our living room, talking about practical things, therapy appointments, ground rules, how to rebuild trust. It's not romantic or cinematic, it's work, the kind of unglamorous daily work that keeps marriages alive. But when Sarah falls asleep with her head on my shoulder, I feel something I haven't felt in years, grateful. Grateful for the accident that took my memory, grateful for the lies that brought us back together, grateful for the divorce that taught us how much we had to lose. Grateful for the chance to love the same person twice, and maybe this time, to get it right. 3 months later, we sit in Dr. Reeves' office every Tuesday at 4 p.m., learning the language of healthy conflict. Today's topic, expressing needs without accusation, which sounds simple until you're trying to tell your husband that when he checks his phone during dinner, you feel invisible all over again. Use I statements, Dr. Reeves reminds us, her voice patient despite the fact that we've covered this ground multiple times. I feel unimportant when you prioritize email over our conversation, Sarah says, her words careful and practiced. I understand that, I respond, following the script we've been learning. I'm still learning to be present. Can you help me by pointing it out when I drift? It sounds stilted, artificial, nothing like the easy intimacy we had during my amnesia months. But Dr. Reeves says that's normal, that we're building new habits to replace old ones, and that feels awkward at first. Our new apartment helps. We chose it together, a smaller space than our house, with an open floor plan that makes it impossible to hide from each other. Sarah has a corner for her easel, I have a desk that faces the living room instead of a wall. No separate offices, no guest rooms to retreat to when things get uncomfortable. It's like being newlyweds again, Sarah said when we first moved in, except we know each other's worst habits. She's painting again, not just the therapeutic dabbling from my recovery period, but real work. Canvases that capture our strange journey. Abstract pieces representing memory and loss, detailed portraits of hands reaching for each other across empty spaces, landscapes that somehow convey the geography of forgiveness. This one's about the day you remembered everything, she tells me, showing me a canvas covered in fragments, broken mirrors reflecting different versions of the same face, puzzle pieces that don't quite fit together. It's beautiful, I tell her, and I mean it. Painful, but beautiful. That's us, isn't it? Painful, but beautiful. I've restructured my entire career, something I never thought possible before the accident. Fewer hours, clearer boundaries, a new understanding that success means nothing if you're too busy achieving it to notice your life. My income dropped by 30%, but Sarah and I decided we'd rather have less money and more time together. The old David would have called that failure, I tell Dr. Reeves during one session. And now? Now I call it learning what actually matters. The hardest part isn't the practical changes, it's learning to trust each other with the small, daily vulnerabilities. When Sarah feels ignored, she has to resist the urge to shut down and instead speak up. When I feel criticized, I have to resist the urge to defend myself and instead listen to what she's really saying. You're both still learning to stay in the conversation instead of leaving it emotionally, Dr. Reeves observes. That's the work of rebuilding intimacy. We're awkward at it sometimes. Sarah will say, "I'm feeling disconnected from you today," and I'll immediately launch into problem-solving mode instead of just acknowledging her feeling. Or I'll say, "I need to feel appreciated for the changes I'm making," and Sarah will hear it as a demand instead of a vulnerability. But we're getting better. Slower than I'd like, faster than Dr. Reeves expected. Most couples don't get the gift of starting over, she tells us. Your amnesia and the months that followed were traumatic, but they also showed you what you're capable of when you're both fully present. That's a powerful foundation to build on. At home, we create new rituals to replace the old patterns. Phone-free dinners where we actually talk to each other, morning coffee together before we start our days. Evening walks around our neighborhood where we practice the art of conversation without agenda. Tell me something I don't know about you has become our favorite game. I used to write poetry in college, Sarah tells me one evening as we walk past the park where I proposed. I know that. I found some of your notebooks when we moved. No, I mean, I still write poetry. I've been writing poems about us, about this whole experience. I have notebooks full of them. This stops me in my tracks. Can I read them? They're not very good. Can I read them anyway? That night, Sarah brings out a composition notebook, pages filled with her careful handwriting, poems about loving someone who doesn't remember you, about the ethics of lying to protect someone's heart, about the strange grief of losing a marriage that was already over. This one's from the night before you remembered everything, she says, pointing to a page near the end. Tomorrow, you might wake up, knowing why I left, and I will lose you twice, once to truth, once to consequence. But tonight, in this borrowed love, I am the wife I always wanted to be, to the husband you always could have been, and that has to be enough. Sarah, I whisper, this is beautiful. It felt like stealing, she admits, loving you when you couldn't remember not to love me back. But you weren't stealing, you were giving. You gave me the marriage I was too stubborn to create when I had the chance. We've started celebrating strange anniversaries, the day my memories returned, the day we decided to try again, the day we signed the lease on our new apartment, small milestones that mark our journey back to each other. Most couples celebrate the day they got married, our neighbor Mrs. Chen observes when she sees us toasting with champagne on a random Tuesday. We're celebrating the day we chose to stay married, Sarah explains. We figured that was worth commemorating. The biggest challenge is integrating our stories with the outside world. Our families and friends know about the accident, the amnesia, the reconciliation, but not about the extent of Sarah's deception. We've agreed to keep that between us and Dr. Reeves, not out of shame, but because it's our story to protect. People want everything to have a neat narrative, Sarah says. Couple gets divorced, husband has accident, they reconcile, clean and simple. But real life is messier, I add. Much messier. Emma still looks at us like we're some kind of miracle or mystery. She can't quite figure out how her workaholic brother became someone who leaves the office at 5 p.m. and remembers his wife's art show openings. James treats me like I've joined some kind of witness protection program, becoming a completely different person overnight. You seem happy, he tells me after one of Sarah's gallery showings, where I spent the evening talking to strangers about her work instead of checking my phone. Different, but happy. I am different, I tell him, and I am happy. 6 months into our new life, Sarah gets accepted into that art residency in Portland, the same one I dismissed so casually before my accident. This time, when she tells me, I'm the one who suggests we open a bottle of wine to celebrate. It's 3 months, she says, cautiously. I'd be gone from September through November. Then I guess I'll be visiting Portland a lot, I reply. You'd be okay with me going? Sarah, I'd be proud of you for going. This is your dream. She starts crying, not sad tears, but the overwhelmed kind that come when something you've wanted for so long finally becomes possible. The old David would have found reasons why it was impractical, she says. The old David was an idiot, I reply. The new David wants to be married to someone who chases her dreams, not someone who shrinks them to fit around his schedule. That night, as we lie in bed in our small apartment with its thin walls and noisy neighbors, Sarah traces patterns on my chest with her finger. Do you think we would have found our way back to each other without the accident? She asks. I don't know, maybe, probably not the same way. Do you think we're the same people we were before, just making different choices? I think we're the people we always had the potential to be. The accident and everything that followed just gave us permission to become them. And if you forget again, not medically, but if you slip back into old patterns, then you remind me who I want to be, and I do the same for you. Promise? Promise. Outside, our neighbors are having one of their late-night arguments, the kind of fight that goes in circles without resolution. Sarah and I listen for a while, recognizing the patterns we used to fall into: accusation, defense, counterattack, retreat. Should we do something? Sarah asks. Like what? I don't know. Send them Dr. Reeves's contact information? I laugh, and Sarah joins me, and soon we're both giggling like teenagers at the absurdity of our situation. Two people who nearly destroyed their marriage offering relationship advice to strangers through apartment walls. We're going to be okay, Sarah says when our laughter subsides. Yeah, I agree. We're going to be okay. It's not a guarantee, love never comes with guarantees, but it's the best kind of hope, the kind built on honest work, daily choices, and the hard-won knowledge that the people we become tomorrow depend on what we decide to do today. 1 year later, we're standing in a bookstore in downtown Portland, watching strangers flip through copies of our book, When I Forgot We Were Divorced, a love story. The title still makes Sarah wince. She wanted something more literary, but our editor insisted it would help people find us. I can't believe people are actually buying it, Sarah whispers as a woman in her 60s approaches the register with our book tucked under her arm. I can't believe we wrote it, I reply. The idea came from Dr. Reeves, who suggested that documenting our experience might help other couples understand the difference between the marriage they want and the marriage they create. Your story is unusual, she said, but the underlying issues are universal. Writing it together was its own form of therapy. We had to agree on which memories to include, how to portray each other's mistakes, whether to reveal the full extent of Sarah's deception. The most difficult chapter was the one about my pre-accident selfishness. Sarah kept trying to soften my failures, while I insisted on brutal honesty. If we're going to help people, I told her during one particularly heated editing session, we have to tell the truth about how bad it got. But I don't want people to hate you. Sarah, I hated me, that's why you left. The book tour has been surreal. At each stop, couples approach us with their own stories of disconnect, neglect, and the slow erosion of intimacy. Last week in Seattle, a woman in her 40s told us about the spreadsheet she kept tracking how many days went by between meaningful conversations with her husband. 47 days, she said. 47 days of living in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, and saying nothing to each other except, "Did you pay the electric bill? And what time will you be home?" In Phoenix, a man told us he'd been planning to ask his wife for a divorce when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. I couldn't leave her while she was sick, he said, but caring for her reminded me why I married her in the first place. Your book helped me understand that people can change, that marriages can have second acts. The most difficult conversation happened in Chicago, when a woman stood up during the QA and accused Sarah of emotional manipulation. You took advantage of your husband's medical condition to live out a fantasy, she said, her voice sharp with judgment. How is that different from any other form of abuse? The room went silent. Sarah gripped my hand so tightly I thought she might break my fingers. "You're right," Sarah said finally. "What I did was ethically questionable at best. I manipulated someone who trusted me completely, and I convinced myself it was for his own good. If David had never recovered his memory, I would have stolen the rest of his life." "Then why should anyone admire your story?" "Because," I interjected, "sometimes people do terrible things for reasons that make sense to them at the time. Sarah didn't deceive me because she wanted to hurt me, she did it because she was terrified of losing me again. That doesn't make it right, but it makes it human. And because," Sarah added, "we're not asking anyone to admire what we did, we're asking them to learn from it. To understand that marriage isn't a fairy tale where love conquers all, it's a daily choice to keep choosing each other, even when it's difficult." After the event, the woman approached us privately. "I've been lying to my husband about our debt for 2 years, she confessed. "Reading your book made me realize I'm not protecting him, I'm protecting myself from his disappointment. I need to tell him the truth. These conversations have taught us that our story isn't really about amnesia or deception, it's about the stories people tell themselves about love, and what happens when those stories collide with reality." Back in our Portland bookstore, a young couple approaches us with a copy of our book. They look like we did 8 years ago, bright-eyed and certain that their love is different, special, immune to the ordinary erosions that destroy other marriages. "We just got engaged," the woman tells us. "My friend said we should read your book before the wedding." "Congratulations," Sarah says warmly. "How long have you been together?" 3 years. We've never really fought, which I think is a good sign." Sarah and I exchange a look. We've learned to recognize the couples who haven't been tested yet, who think conflict is a sign of incompatibility rather than an opportunity for deeper understanding. "Fighting isn't the problem," I tell them gently. "The problem is not knowing how to fight productively or avoiding conflict until it becomes resentment." "The best advice we can give you," Sarah adds, "is to learn each other's emotional languages now, while you still remember to pay attention." After they leave, we walk through Portland's Pearl District, past the coffee shops and galleries where Sarah will spend the next 3 months. Her residency starts next week, and I'm both excited for her and terrified of the separation. "Are you worried about the distance?" Sarah asks, reading my expression. "A little, not because I don't trust us, but because I've learned not to take us for granted." "Good," she says. "The moment we start taking each other for granted is the moment we start drifting apart again." We stop outside the studio where Sarah will be working, a converted warehouse with huge windows and the kind of northern light she's always dreamed of painting in. "I have something for you," she says, pulling a small wrapped package from her purse. Inside is a leather journal, similar to the one where she wrote her poetry during my recovery. "For while I'm gone," she explains, "so you can write down the things you want to tell me but forget between phone calls." "What will you write in yours?" "Everything I'm learning about painting light, about being away from you without losing you. About trusting that loving someone means letting them grow, even if they grow in directions that scare you." That evening, we have dinner at the restaurant where Sarah celebrated her gallery showing 6 months ago, the first time I'd ever seen her work displayed professionally, the first time I understood that I wasn't just married to someone who painted as a hobby, but to an artist whose work moved strangers to tears. "Remember what you said that night?" Sarah asks as we split a piece of chocolate cake. "That I was proud of you. You said you'd always been proud of me, you just forgot to mention it for a few years. Did that hurt to hear?" "Yes and no. It hurt because it was true, you were proud of me, you just stopped showing it. But it also gave me hope, because it meant the husband I needed was still in there somewhere. And now? Now I know he's not hiding anymore." We walk back to our hotel, through Portland's quiet streets, past couples sharing late dinners and friends laughing on bar patios, and all the ordinary magic of people choosing to be together. "Sarah," I say, as we wait for the elevator, "do you think we would have made it if we'd started over without all the drama, if we'd just gone to counseling and worked on our problems the normal way?" "I don't know, maybe, but I think the accident and everything that followed forced us to confront how bad things had gotten. Most couples drift apart gradually, and they adjust to each new level of disconnection until they're living like roommates and calling it marriage. The lies you told weren't really about me having amnesia, I realize. They were about us having forgotten how to love each other. And remembering wasn't just about your brain healing, it was about both of us remembering what we were capable of." In our hotel room, we lie in bed reading reviews of our book on Sarah's phone. Most are positive, but there are critics who think our story is too neat, too redemptive, unrealistic in its hopeful ending. Real marriages don't get fairy tale second chances, Sarah reads aloud. This book sells false hope to couples who would be better off accepting that some relationships are meant to end. Do you think they're right? I ask. I think they're right that most marriages don't get the kind of dramatic reset we had, but I also think every marriage gets dozens of small chances to reset, moments when you can choose to see your partner differently, to respond differently, to be different. We just needed something extreme to force us to take advantage of those chances. So what do we tell people who don't have amnesia as an excuse to start over? That you don't need an excuse, you just need to decide that the person you're married to deserves the best version of yourself, and then do the work to become that person. 3 days later, I fly back to Seattle while Sarah begins her residency. Our goodbye at the airport is emotional but not desperate. We've learned the difference between missing someone and losing them. I'll call you every night, Sarah promises. I'll write in the journal every day. And if you forget to make yourself dinner or start working late every night, you'll remind me that taking care of myself is taking care of us. Exactly. Over the next 3 months, we learn to love each other from a distance. Sarah sends me photos of her paintings in progress, canvases covered in Portland rain and Tijuana's quality of light she finds in the Pacific Northwest. I send her pages from my journal, documenting the ordinary magic of learning to be alone without being lonely. I realize today that I like my own company now, I write in one entry. Before the accident, I think I avoided being alone because I didn't particularly enjoy the person I was. But this version of me, the one who chooses you every day, who pays attention to sunsets and remembers to call his sister, I actually like spending time with him. Sarah's letters are full of artistic breakthroughs and personal insights. I'm painting the way I felt when you looked at me during my recovery, like I was the most interesting thing in the room. I never realized how powerful it is to be seen that way, or how much I'd missed it. When she returns in November, her work has evolved. The paintings she brings home are brighter, more confident, filled with a kind of light I've never seen her capture before. You found something in Portland, I tell her, as we hang her latest piece in our living room. I found out who I am when I'm not afraid of taking up space, she says, and I found out that I can miss you without forgetting myself. That night, as we make dinner together in our small kitchen, Sarah tells me about the couple she met at a coffee shop in Portland, married 43 years, still holding hands while they read the newspaper. I asked them what their secret was, she says, chopping vegetables while I watch her work. The woman said, we decided early on that we'd rather be happy than right, and we remind each other of that decision whenever we forget. Simple but not easy, I observe. Nothing worthwhile is easy. As winter settles over Seattle, we establish new rhythms. Sarah paints in the mornings when the light is best. I work in the afternoons when she's usually napping off her creative exhaustion. Evenings are for cooking together, talking through our days, reading in bed with our feet tangled under the covers. This is what I always wanted, Sarah tells me one night as snow falls outside our bedroom window. Not the grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but this, ordinary Tuesday nights when we choose each other over our phones, over our individual pursuits, over the million small distractions that pull couples apart. I love ordinary Tuesday nights with you, I tell her. Good, she says, turning off her reading light and settling against my shoulder. Because we're going to have about 2,000 more of them if we're lucky. Only 2,000? I tease. I'm being conservative, I don't want to jinx us. But as Sarah falls asleep beside me, I find myself hoping for much more than 2,000 Tuesday nights. I hope for ordinary Wednesdays and lazy Sunday mornings, and all the beautiful mundane moments that make up a life lived in partnership with someone who sees you clearly and chooses you anyway. Because that's what we've learned. Love isn't the lightning bolt that brings two people together, it's the steady current that keeps them connected through all the ordinary days between the dramatic ones. It's the choice to stay curious about someone you've been married to for years, to keep learning their heart's geography even when you think you've memorized every detail. Our story began with forgetting, but it's taught us everything about remembering to be grateful, remembering to pay attention, remembering that the person sleeping beside you is not guaranteed to be there tomorrow, so you'd better love them properly today. And that, more than any fairy tale ending, feels like a legacy worth leaving.